Well, we're going to go ahead and get started with our presentation today of employee versus independent contractor. We are recording this, so I'll have it on my YouTube channel and we'll send out the link to everybody who signed up but couldn't make it today. But today we're just going to be discussing a little topic of employee versus independent contractor. And so just if this is your first time watching a presentation by me, a little about me, my practice areas are estate planning, Medicaid planning, and business planning. And my name is Lauren Ward, and I work at A Business Law Firm. I'm a partner at A Business Law Firm in Spartanburg, South Carolina. And so this is one of our main practice areas is business law and helping our clients make sure that we have them set if they need to hire an employee, hire people as employees or independent contractors, and weigh in the pros and cons. So today we're going to discuss what is an employee versus an independent contractor. Why does it matter which one I pick? And if I say I'm using independent contractors, are they really meeting the standard to be an independent contractor? So just real quick, we're going to go over some definitions of what is an independent contractor: a person, business, or corporation that provides goods or services under a written or verbal agreement. They are not an employee, they're an independent contractor. An employee is a person employed for wages or salary. Just quick definition so we'll understand what we're talking about. So when you think about an independent contractor, this is someone that you're outsourcing to do some work for you that isn't your employee, that maybe you want them to do a project, or maybe you're just hiring them on an as needed basis situation. So there's some benefits of hiring this independent contractor. They're not an employee. They do not have to deal with their taxes and withholdings. You're going to give them, if they get their full, so if the project pays $1,000, they get their full $1,000. You don't pay any withholdings. You don't pay any taxes for them because they're going to get their own. You give them their W-10. They have everything they need. Make sure if you're doing independent contractors, I always recommend, have that accountant on board to make sure you give them the proper paperwork they need for their taxes, but you are just going to give them their tax return paperwork. They go to their own accountant and they have to pay their own taxes. With independent contractors, they can set their own wages and hours. So they may tell you, I want to work X amount of hours per week, or this project's going to take X amount of time. They can take on what projects they want. They can decide they don't want to do these things. So for instance, we see a lot of independent contractors in construction world with things like you hire a builder to build your house. So maybe they outsource work like doing the painting to a group of painters. They tell them, we want this done. The construction company says, you have to have this painted by the end of the month at 5 p.m. And then the painters are allowed to go do the work when they want to do it, use their own tools, do kind of everything they want to do on their own. So you just hired them to complete that project. So that's kind of the benefits of an independent contractor there. They can set their own wages, take their own projects. And from an employment standpoint, you're not having to sit there and manage everything they do, you're just giving them a project. And they can end the relationship for any reason you want or they want. You're not committed into a long-term thing typically. So the benefits of an employee, we all know an employee is a person who works for the company. The big benefit, a lot of control. You tell the employee when to work. You can set requirements for them to do certain amounts of work. Maybe you work at a company and they need to get X amount of bills went through a day, or they need to get X amount of phone calls made. You can set these requirements for an employee. And there's a little less confusion sometimes since you are the employer and they are the employee. You know that relationship. You know you're their boss. So that's some benefits of an employee. With an employee, you are going to have to make sure you do their proper withholdings for taxes and self-employment, everything like that. You want to make sure you have an accountant on board so you can make sure you're doing their taxes properly. But I think with an employee, there is less confusion and you're controlling everything. You are the boss. You are in control. So the big thing we have to decide is, what is the best benefit for my business? And it really depends. You have to look at the job structure. What are you wanting? Are you wanting a receptionist that's going to be at the front desk, 9 to 5 every day to be there to greet your customers? If so, you're looking more at an employee because you're wanting to control her hours work. You're wanting to control what work they do and how they do it. Or are you saying, hey, I'm own a salon and I just want to have a nail tech come in here and just so it helps me bring in a little extra income, helps my clients out. And the nail tech can set his or her own hours. They can do work, anytime the building's open. And we just set up an agreement that they're in here to do what they want, when they want, and just kind of they're a part of our business. Are you in a situation where you're hiring, you're in the construction work and you just need a project done? Are you wanting to outsource? Maybe you're a company and you need some help with graphic design because that's not your work, and you want to outsource these graphic design projects to somebody. That's the independent contractor. Are you wanting somebody to be there to handle the day-to-day work and do everything for you? Are you wanting to be able to control them? Are you wanting to be able to manage or micromanage their work to make sure they get everything done you want? Then you may want an employee. So I think looking at the job structure is a big thing. What are you actually looking for in this situation? Are you wanting them to be flexible and complete work and projects as needed? Or do you want someone working set hours doing specific tasks? So for instance, if I want somebody to be my office manager, I'm going to want them more in an employee concept than an independent contractor, because I'm going to want them in the office. I'm going to want them to be there to manage the filing, to manage the telephones, all that type stuff would make them more of an employee than an independent contractor. So I think you have to think about the job and what responsibility you're wanting and what you're really wanting overall done. Are you wanting to manage, or are you just wanting to get a project to get it done type situation? So the big thing is, why does it matter? One thing is taxes. Should you be withholding their taxes? Should you be making sure you're doing everything with your accountant to withhold their taxes? Because there's a big difference if you're an employee versus an independent contractor for tax purposes. Workers' compensation. Do you need this? Is this something that you need to have because they're an employee? And just because you say they're an independent contractor, we'll talk about this in a minute. Are they truly an independent contractor? Are they truly, you don't need workers' comp? So if you have employees, if you have a certain amount of employees, you're going to need to have workers' compensation. But if you don't have employees, you don't need this. But the thing is, you need to make sure, if you're going to independent contractors, you truly do have independent contractors, so you don't come back and get a fine for not having workers' compensation insurance. And then another question, are you liable for their negligence? Are they an employee that's acting as your agent? Are they an independent contractor doing their own thing and they have to have their own insurance? They have to be responsible for their own negligence. You've hired a separate company to do this. So I think those are things that it does matter why you classify. I think you have to think about, what do I want? Do I want it based on the job structure and my needs? But also, because I'm picking this, I need to know what I have to do here with taxes, workers' comp, and knowing about negligence. If they're your employee and they're acting on your behalf, you're likely going to be liable for their negligence. But if they're an independent contractor and you have this agreement with them saying they're an independent contractor and they have to have their own insurance, that could help you with not being liable for their negligence. So a big factor with the independent contractor is making sure they truly are an independent contractor. So you've made this decision, you think, I don't need an employee, I just need an independent contractor. Well, we have a test we look at to make sure they are truly an independent contractor and not an employee. So what instructions are they required to comply with? Are you telling them how to do every detail of their job? Are you telling them this is how they have to do something? That looks more like an employee than an independent contractor, because you're exercising that control. How much training do they have to go to do this project for you? If they're doing a lot of training and have to do something very specifically, we may be looking more at an employee. Are they integral to your business? Without them, could your business function? If so, then they're an independent contractor if they're not integral. But if they are integral to your business, we might be looking more at an employee situation. Can they hire their own assistants? So can they hire people to help them with the work? If they can, you look more like an independent contractor. If they can't, you're maybe looking more like an employee. Work hours. Are you telling them they have to work Monday through Friday, 9 to 5, and controlling their hours? If so, that's more employee. If it's independent contractor, it's more you set your own hours. I did have a question, and it was, what is the maximum numbers of hours a contractor can work? Well, that's the thing. A contractor picks and chooses their own hours. So they take on a project, they may work, 60 hours a week for you on this project, but then be done the next week. So we're looking at, are they constantly working for you full time? Are they taking on projects? Where's their place of work? Are you allowing them to work where they so choose? Or are you making them come into the business? How are they getting paid? Are you paying them per project? Are you paying them for their hours worked? We're looking at those type things to see how much control you have over them. Are they paying their own expenses? They need to have their insurance. They need to have their own workers' comp if they have employees. That's more in an independent contractor situation. What about their tools and materials? Are you supplying them? Are they allowed to supply them themselves? It's an independent contractor. They tend to be able to supply their tools and materials, and they need to have the right to discharge and quit whenever they so choose as an independent contractor. So that's the big thing is, so you've made the decision that they are going to be an independent contractor, but you want to make sure they're really meeting the independent contractor test. A lot of times what we recommend is, if you're hiring independent contractors, making them have their own LLC or corporation. Instead of you paying the individual directly, you're going to be paying their corporation or their LLC. So that way it does add a little extra there to say that they are independent contractors. I think it's very big to know which way you want to go. And when you do decide to pick that independent contractor, you're thinking of, am I really truly having an independent contractor, or am I having an employee that I am just going to say is an independent contractor? And making sure you're following these requirements, looking at this test, because if they are an employee, but you're calling them an independent contractor, that's where you could get fines for workers' comp and those type situations. So you want to make sure whatever you're classifying them as, that's truly what they are. So sometimes the safest way in terms of taxes is say they're an employee and just go ahead and withhold all that and go ahead and have the workers' comp. But if they're truly an independent contractor, you want to make sure they are by looking at this test here. So when you're thinking of hiring an employee or an independent contractor, do you need to have contracts in place? I believe with an independent contractor, it helps to have an independent contractor agreement in place that lays out the terms, showing them that, they do have to have their own insurance. You're not covering any fringe benefits for them. You're not giving them retirement account. You're not paying health insurance. They're allowed to have their own tools. They're allowed to do work on the hours they want to do it. This is the project you need, laying out the very specifics of your situation. With employees, a lot of times it depends on the situation. So as we know, South Carolina is an employment at will state, which means you can hire and fire as you so choose, as long as it's not discriminatory. A lot of times you have a handbook or code of conduct for your employees. And once you have these things, you need to make sure you're following them, because this is the contract with your employee on how you're going to handle things. But once again, we are employment at will state. So if you need to have that handbook or code of conduct, that's something you'll want to talk about with your attorney in a very specific situation. But so with contractors, independent contractors, I do think it's helpful to have that agreement, because that's just extra proof if you get called into court or anything else. So for instance, if an independent contractor is doing a job for you, they have an accident, and so the person sues the independent contractor, they may sue you as well, acting the agent theory, but you're going to say, no, we followed these rules and we have this independent contractor agreement. It's not a save all, but it's definitely helpful when you're dealing with independent contractors. If there's any type of litigation in place, having that agreement is just extra evidence for you. So this was a pretty quick webinar today, because I just wanted to kind of go over the high points of employees versus independent contractors. We know that employees and independent contractors both have their pros and cons, and it really depends on your situation, which is best for you. You want to weigh the pros of control of the person and flexibility, what you're wanting them to do, what you need. Do you want to micromanage them and handle everything? Then you're probably looking at an employee. Do you want them there all week, 9 to 5? You may be looking at an employee. Do you just have something you need them to handle here and there, or they take on projects as needed? Then you might look more of an independent contractor. Say, I like to think of independent contractors too, maybe like Uber or Lyft or whatever those. They're independent contractors most of the time, because They decide which people they want to pick up. They have the right to not take people on. So that makes them an independent contractor because they take cases as they see fit. I think it depends ultimately on what you want for your business and the level of control you need to have. And when you start working on this, make sure you label them properly. You don't just pick one, but know you're not going to follow the test so they truly are an employee. No, you want to make sure if you decide they're an independent contractor, they truly are an independent contractor and what works best for you for tax purposes, as well as if you need to have workers' compensation. Um, One question I also got is, are there fines from the IRS employer could be given if they are treating contractors like employees? So if you should be withholding and you're not, you might have some issues with the IRS. Ultimately, it's on that person since you gave them their tax form. There could be instances where you possibly could have some liability. I think the biggest place it comes in is workers' comp. And then I think the biggest place it comes in is also making sure that if they have an accident or anything, you're not liable because they have their own insurance and all those type things. It really is an important distinction to make when you're hiring someone to work for your company or to outsource work for is, do I need an employee or do I need an independent contractor? And I think that's a discussion you should have, based on your business plans and with your attorney to make sure you're doing the right part for your business. But it is important to make these right decisions. That concludes our little webinar for today. If you have any questions in the future, feel free to give me a call or an email. And once again, this is going to be posted on my YouTube page and we'll send out the link. So if you have anybody that you think could benefit from this webinar, please feel free to share. Once again, I'm Lauren Ward with the Business Law Firm, and we are happy to help you with any employment versus independent contractor questions. And we are located at 1989 South Pine Street in Spartanburg. And feel free to give us a call at 864-699-9801. And thank you for joining us today. And be on the lookout for our next webinar that'll be coming up in April. And I hope you all have a happy St. Patrick's Day.